Okay, I can go ahead and start or
Rob, you have any announcements this morning?
No announcements from me. Thank you, David.
All right. Me either. Might as well just get started with the presentation, Mooneer, and Winlink Gateway on the cheap. So let's see what we can do. I'm going to go ahead and mute everybody's microphone. And so Mooneer, you'll probably have to redo yours microphone. So I'm going to mute everybody else.
actually, hang on. Can you guys see the whole presentation right now or?
It's good.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Okay. Hi everyone. So today we're going to be talking about Winlink gateways on the cheap, and a little bit about myself. As Rob has mentioned like earlier, I'm basically one of the Winlink owners for San Diego ARES, and I run the basically net control for the weekly Winlink net, and it's conducted fully over Winlink. I email out every Thursday night / early Friday morning around like in the middle of the night. Um, if you're not already on that net, like participating in that, and you would like to, you can go ahead and just email me at my call sign at winlink.org to request to be subscribed to that. And then in addition, I also currently run the K6AQ-10 VARA FM Gateway, new as of this year. And I also do various other radio related and open source projects in my spare time. And a few of the examples, like FreeDV, I wrote like an MFJ magloop controller based on Arduino, can do over Wi-Fi. If you guys can also ask me after the presentation if you want any information on those. Hang on, there we go. So there's a few components to a gateway. Basically, first off is a way to transmit and receive signals you get to and from the client stations. And that consists of the obvious stuff, radio, antenna, coax, sound card interface, so forth. And then second is a way to forward messages to and from the clients. So basically like internet over HF to another Winlink gateway, etc. And then finally a device that goes in between those two to interface back and forth. And this is typically a PC running Winlink software. And there's a few considerations that you have to keep in mind when setting up your own gateway. The most important is that it has to remain up basically as close to 24/7 as possible. And if you go like onto Winlink's website and you read like the SISOP like agreement, that they basically do mention that. Like maybe not those exact words, but that's basically how it goes. So keeping that in mind, it's easy enough to do that sort of thing, like to keep something up 24 hours or as close to it as possible when you have consistent power, your hardware is reliable, and etc. But in an emergency situation where power might be questionable, internet connectivity might be questionable, how will you be able to accomplish that? And a lot of like how you'll be able to accomplish that as well is like what kinds of emergencies are the most likely. So here in the San Diego area, it's mostly going to be wildfires, earthquakes, and like wind events like the ones we've had earlier this winter. And as you can imagine, those like the wind events in particular can easily cut the power and like internet connectivity to your gateway location. And then second off, what kind of coverage do you expect to provide? So, and then a lot of that consists like on where the gateway will reside, whether it'll be at your own QTH, in EOC, on a hilltop next to one of the existing repeaters, etc. And And that's also, that coverage is also depends in part on the antenna, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later in the presentation. What modes are you going to support? So in the past, it's traditionally been packet on the VHF side and Pactor on HF. But with the advent of reasonably performant sound card modems, like and the whole technology in general, it's been quickly shifting going towards the sound modem side rather than the separate hardware side. And in particular, VAR is becoming the most commonly used mode on Winlink in general because it's significantly superior to like all, with the possible exception of Pactor, it's superior to all the other modes that have been used on Winlink. And for my gateway, I've decided to basically support only VARA FM, not support packet at this time. Of course, that could be something that changes in the future, but maybe something better than Winlink or better than VARA comes out, for instance. But for the time being, it supports VARA for now. But that if you wanted to support something like maybe your user base still mostly consists of packet, that would have to be something you'd have to consider as well, like when making this decision. And then what bands should you use? That goes back to what kind of coverage you expect to have. So like if, for instance, if you set up a gateway on only 40 meters, for instance, you would maybe get to adjacent states during the day and a little bit farther at night, sort of deal. And then if you set up something on VHF and UHF, then your coverage area would basically be line of sight from the gateway, with a few exceptions. And K6AQ-10 in particular is only on 70 centimeters. And 70 centimeters was chosen because there was already a lot of Winlink infrastructure on 2 meters, both in Baja California and in the LA area. And I wanted to, even though it was fairly unlikely, I wanted to try to avoid stepping on both. And the 70 centimeter decision was also driven a lot on antenna restrictions, and which I'll also discuss later in the presentation. And in considering all that, like, what resources do you have and or could obtain to achieve those objectives? So you may already have a lot of this stuff in your shack. Like, you may have to go out and buy some stuff online. Like, it depends on like what decisions you're making as part of the gateway planning. So once you're ready to set up a gateway, the first step is like the radio you're going to be choosing for the gateway. And something that to keep in mind, that like the easier it is to interface that radio with your PC, the better. Like, for instance, a lot of newer radios have like a USB interface, and you plug that into your computer, and it basically gives you cat control and a sound card. So like modern ICOM radios, for instance. And then others have like a 96, like a mini DIN 6 connector in the back, which is a fairly common port on the back of radios for data connectivity. And on that note, it's, if at all possible, you should try to go with a radio that is capable of 9600 baud packet. That mainly increases your options. In particular, VARA FM wide requires 9600 capability. You can still use a radio that doesn't do 9600 for VARA FM, but you would be restricted to the narrow mode, which doesn't have as high of a maximum speed. And then for reliability, like, there are some radios that have like a good reputation for use in like repeater service or like normal packet gateways. Like, for instance, the Olinco has a series of single band, they're marketed as mobile radios, but people have used them for like packet gateways and like repeater service before, and people like seem to like those. And K6AQ in -10 in particular uses an encode DR435. And finally, there's nothing wrong with the used market. You don't absolutely have to buy new. And in fact, buying new could very well like cost you more money than buying a good condition used radio. Like the DR435 the Gateway is using, I bought on the QTH classifieds. And of course you have to like use caution when dealing with the used market. Like maybe when the pandemic's better, it might be more viable to like go visit the radio in person sort of deal. But like always, like the typical like cautions and like tips for shopping online apply here. So make sure you get photos of the thing you're trying to buy, except like as good of a description as the condition as possible. Like I lucked out because the DR435 was basically unused. Like the last owner bought it for like a project that never materialized. So it basically had no time on it and it looked pretty much new. Just stuff to keep in mind. And then once you have the radio set up, it's time to consider the antenna system for the gateway. It should be an antenna separate from your main stations if possible, mainly because it's a lot cheaper to buy like a separate antenna and separate coax for it than to like have to work around like separation or like restricted space problems. But if you do have a restricted space issue, like say you work or you live in an HOA, or you're on a repeater site with other like repeaters and other antennas on towers, there are options, and we'll discuss that in a little bit. A separate antenna also, like if you do manage are able to get another antenna, then you would want adequate separation to avoid interference with your main station or others, or like any other stations at your site. And that's important because like if you have two antennas that are too close to each other and one of them is transmitting, it will at least on VHF and UHF, it will desense the other station in the best case. And worst case, it could very well damage your radio. And we'll talk more about like workarounds if like that separation isn't possible. And then you also want the antenna as high as required to produce the desired coverage. So like, if there's actually a program called Splat with the exclamation point which can map out your predicted coverage based on like frequency and parameters, etc., and other parameters you provide before like installation, so you can help assist in planning. And I actually used Splat to produce some like predicted maps of the gateway's coverage area, and I believe I posted those on the reflector earlier this year. And then as for the antenna itself, you might not need as big of an antenna as you think. For like gateway use, the pattern matters like as much, if not more, than the advertised gain. A lot of antenna manufacturers like Diamond and Comet, for instance, they give you like a gain number in their marketing, and it's but that gain number on its own doesn't really like tell you much. Like it doesn't tell you like in what directions that gain is going to be in. So like if you're on like a mountaintop, for instance, and you use like one of their bigger antennas, it's very possible that a lot of the signal could be going like more in the upward direction rather than like outward towards like the people who are going to be using your gateway. So it would potentially impact your coverage. And then on that same note with the antenna pattern, too wide of a coverage area can also be problematic. For instance, in the past, like Packet, it is capable of supporting more than one user at a time that's connected to a gateway. So you could have a Packet gateway that like covers a fairly wide area, and people wouldn't be stepping on each other. For newer stuff like VARA, like VARA FM in particular only supports one user at a time. So if you have like a very wide coverage area, like say for instance you were to set up a gateway on Keller Peak up in San Bernardino County, that like Keller Peak actually reaches all the way down in San Diego. So your gateway would be covering basically a vast majority of Southern California, and that Southern California area in general has like over, I think like more than like, it has like the majority of the state's population. Like I don't remember exact numbers, but and considering how many of those are hams and want to use WinLink, there could be a bunch of people just trying to connect and none of them could get in because VARA is like only can handle one person at a time. So like the exact coverage that should probably, like you'd probably want to tune your coverage to take that into account as well. And then one money saving tip, there are some antennas that they're designed for mobile use, like the SBB5, that could be viable options as well for your gateway antenna, especially if it's at if it's a gateway that's at your own QTH, like a lower level gateway. I personally wouldn't try to do this on a mountaintop. I would maybe try to do something that's more rigid that could withstand the high wind load. Like the mobile antennas are designed to be used while in a car going 70 miles an hour on the freeway, but still, I personally, it's just mainly a disclaimer. I haven't really tested it. Like you would probably want to play with it before you decide on that. And assuming that the repeater site or wherever you put it on allows you to use something like that, their policies may actually tie your hands and force you to use something more rigid. So just a thought for something to save money. And then there are some cases where your space is restricted or you can't get enough separation. And for those, you probably have to use the same. You may have to use the same antenna for your main station and your gateway, or your gateway and one or more repeater sites, one or more repeaters. And for that, you basically have to use duplexers and or cavity filters to avoid descents or frying your radio, as mentioned earlier. In the past, those were actually pretty expensive. So a lot of people basically had to build their own, and you can still build your own, but there are actually reasonable options on eBay that come from China that take up very little space, especially for 70 centimeters. I'm not sure how well they do on a repeater site, but if you're using it at your home QTH or at your QTH, you it's just your main station and the gateway, they perform pretty well. And K6AQ10 actually does use duplexers because it's at my QTH and I live in an HOA situation. Of course, that's still more expensive than a separate second antenna plus coax, but you'll also be spending a lot more money trying to replace burned out radios if you don't spend the money on the front end. So it's mainly a case of if you have to, you have to. And then this slide is fairly obvious, but you should for the connection to your radio, you should have the appropriate coax. So say something like LMR 400 for VHF and UHF, and then mainly RG8X for HF, but you can go higher if you want. Of course, the thicker the cable, the more expensive it is. A lot of people like hardline but it's really hardline is pretty expensive compared to LMR, and you would probably only want to use that for longer runs as an example. And speaking of that, you you should probably keep the runs as short as possible, mainly to reduce your loss as well as the amount of money you have to spend on coax. And then once you have the coax, you want to like seal it up the best you can, because like the worst thing you want to have is like some sort of intermittent like fault in the coax that causes issues, and you'd have to like spend a whole bunch of time tracing it out, and then you have to like replace it too once you figure it out. So like if you spend money on protecting stuff now, then the gateway is more trouble free, and like you don't have to replace stuff nearly as often. And then once you have the radio and the antenna set up, the next is to interface your radio to your PC. And this is actually fairly straightforward. The same devices that like the people who are going to be connecting to your gateway use are also in use on the gateway side. So like for instance, like a Signal Link, you could use Signal Link, the Masters Communications DRA series or RA series. I actually use I have two DRA series interfaces here. One for I think it's a DRA 36 on K6AQ-10, and like a DRA 45, I believe the number is, on my portable setup. And though, like I recommend those because they're significantly cheaper than Signal Link, even if pre-assembled. And on top of that, if you have soldering experience, you can build it yourself and save an additional $30. So if you're really tight on money, like, and want to get some like building experience in, it's a viable option. And it's something that you can build in a single evening. Like it's not like everything is through whole components. The stuff that surface mount is already pre-installed for you, so you don't need to know having like any crazy like surface mount like experience in order to put these together. Something to keep in mind though, if you're choosing an interface, is that some interfaces don't support 9600 mode and like VARA FM wide. For instance, older Signal Links like are only capable of VARA FM narrow. So if you end up buying like say a Signal Link used, that could potentially limit your options. So yeah, some just stuff to keep in mind. And then you also want your outside connectivity for gateway, and that's, if it's at your QTH, is generally going to be your existing internet connection. And in general for Winlink, they use internet whenever possible. And there's fallback only if the internet connection goes out. So like, and then on top of that, like the network setup is actually fairly straightforward. If you have DHCP on your router, which you probably do, you can pretty much use Windows' default like network settings, and it will like get IP address from your router, and then like the Winlink software will like communicate out from itself to the internet rather than the other way around. So you won't have to forward ports or do any special config setup on the router side in order to get that side working. And then, as we'll talk about in a little bit, the Winlink software can be set up in various modes in case the internet connection does go out. And then finally, we get to the actually setting up the gateway. The Winlink team highly recommends a dedicated PC. In fact, I think that's also one of the requirements on this ISOP agreement. And this is important because if it's shared with like all of your other ham radio stuff, or like stuff maybe your kids are using, for instance, like your kids might like accidentally shut off the gateway, or like Windows might, or some other application might do like a random update, or like cause like instability due to some sort of software bug. And on a dedicated PC, for just running the gateway stuff, it means that all that's basically running is the Winlink software. And so that means like there are no other applications that could possibly interfere. The gateway itself could be kept in an out of the way location so that like people in the same building don't accidentally like touch it, etc. The good news, that might sound expensive, but the good news is that the Winlink software has like a very low software footprint. 4 gigs of RAM is basically sufficient to, if nothing else is running, as well as like a 64 gig disk, like of disk space. That's the disk space. That's the size of the disk in general. Like the Winlink software doesn't take nearly that much space. And based on that, like there are $100 to $150 PCs on Amazon that meet those requirements. In fact, recently there was one that was selling for like 119 on Amazon that I ended up picking up for the gateway, brand new. But like you can, if you're willing to go used for that, you can look on Craigslist or like other sales type sites and like be able to buy them for significantly less. And then I also did some testing on a Raspberry Pi 4B running Windows 10 for ARM, and it actually ran perfectly fine. Like VARA FM, all of the Winlink Gateway software, and in fact, K6AQ 10 for the first week or two was running on a Raspberry Pi. I ultimately went with a separate PC, like a regular PC for that, because the Windows 10 for ARM for the Raspberry Pi is like an insider only build or something like that. So, and I wasn't comfortable running like beta software long term, but like it's something in a pinch that you can use for like testing before you go out and buy an actual PC. And then you also need to determine how your gateway will be powered. So usually it's via AC power, but like you also have to plan for what would happen if it goes out, going back to like what was discussed in the considerations earlier. And the recommended minimum is typically like a home UPS. But the problem with that is they typically only provide enough runtime to safely power everything down. So like for a normal PC, they generally only run for like 15 to 20 minutes tops. And that's basically just enough time to go to the start menu and choose shutdown. So like if you need it to run longer, and if it's like only like small blips in power, like for a couple minutes at a time, that might be okay. But like in a disaster scenario, you would want something that would be able to power the gateway for longer periods of time. Personally, I've had good experience with the Epic Power Gate and like LiPo batteries in general. I have a 50 amp hour LiPo battery connected to the Epic Power Gate, and like I haven't tried the run down the battery yet, but like it does switch between battery and the typical station DC power supply okay without any issues. And then if you already have a whole house generator or like just a portable generator you can plug in just to the gateway, that's also a possibility. And like station emergency power in general is like a presentation all on its own, and like there's like a bunch of other resources online if you want to go down that rabbit hole. So and then finally we get to the software. There are 3 major Winlink Gateway software components. The first one is RMS packet, and that's responsible for the VHF UHF connections, so like packet and VARA FM. RMS tri-mode is responsible for HF gateway duties, and that's RDOP, VAR, HF, or PACTOR. And then RMS relay is I'd say it's an optional package. Like it enables a lot of like the types of forwarding that can occur during outages. If you don't have that, I believe the RMS package just doesn't accept connections if the internet goes out. But that might be something I need to test some more. And then finally, whatever required software modems you you need. So like VARA, HF, or FM, the UZ7HO program if you want to support packet, etc. And my personal recommendation is to install relay plus either packet and or try mode, or either packet or a try mode at minimum, if you're only going to be supporting HF or VHF. And then obviously you would need to support, like, download all three if you want to support, if you want to be an HF gateway as well as some VHF/UHF. And then let me, I can go ahead and show you what the gateway software looks like real quick. So right now we're looking at a remote desktop session to the gateway. As you can see here, I only have ARES packet and relay set up right now, since I only support VHF, well, I guess UHF. And then I have VARA FM on the lower left. And then as you can see in the ARES packet up here, KK6LJ was the last person to connect. And then this putty window up here is actually the Epic Power Gate. And eventually I want to write something which will automatically power down this machine if the voltage gets low enough, but that's on my list of projects. But for now, I just have I have it just listing the current battery status. And then here is, I just have task manager. If I go to the performance tab, the CPU is actually it's a 1.44 gigahertz Atom CPU, and the system is only using 20% CPU just sitting here. And in the memory, it's using about almost 60% of the memory, but like I said earlier, it's only the Winlink software running on here, so it's not a mat. So it's more than enough to be able to handle that. And we'll go back to the presentation. So yeah, so in order to set up the, once you have the programs installed, you won't be able to proceed any further with configuration without authorization of the Winlink team. And a lot of the authorization is basically agreeing to the SISOP requirements. So in order to ask for permission to set up the gateway, you need to email Steve Waterman K4CJX, and there's a specific email address for that on the Winlink website, and I'll have that in the I'll include that when I send out the slides after the presentation, and as well as links to other stuff we've talked about. So and then once you've received that acknowledgement, you can go ahead, email back from him, you can go ahead and proceed with the setup. And that usually when I set it up, it took about a day or so for that to happen. And then while you're waiting for that, you can actually, if you're doing a VARA station, you can, a good way you can test the, whether you have the basic stuff all plugged in and working correctly is to just run VARA in digipeater mode and use peer-to-peer, get a friend or someone else to do tests through, and have both of you connect through the gateway in peer-to-peer mode. And if you can send messages back and forth, that's usually a good indication that you have everything set up correctly, at least on the radio and interface side. And then once you have that permission, you can go ahead and do your setup. ARES packet and try mode, they produce a dialog box when you first start them up, and it'll be similar to what I show in the next slide, which and it's not something that can that disappears and you can't get back to it again. You can go to the settings settings menu and choose site properties, and you can go back to that anytime. And then for packet, you also need to set up like channels, and that's basically what people are going to be connecting to. And that's necessary for the gateway to officially become live. And in packet, it's under the settings menu as well. And it's like there's like a VARA FM settings, packet settings, etc. So this slide is basically the RMS packet like site properties dialog. And as you can see, like it asks for your base call sign, your actual call sign, like what you use to connect to Winlink normally. Same thing with that password. It's the same password you use for Winlink Express. And then you also need to put in the grid square that your gateway is on, the operating hours, which will almost always be 24/7, unless there's some like exception to that rule. And if there's some sort of exception, you would want to put that in there. And then you want to choose how you're accessing the TNC options are mainly for like if you're using TNC hardware. You can actually, I believe you can actually like if you're just doing a VAR FM only station, you can just ignore that option. But I believe I haven't really done any packet gateway setup. So like I believe you can also ignore these, but for that, if you're using a sound like UZ7HO, but I feel like you also need to do AGW. That might be something I'll need to play around with some more. And then if you're using RMS Relay, there's an RMS Relay checkbox. And then if you're going to be using RMS Relay, you almost always want to do a local host. If you want to have your relay on another machine, like say you have a separate machine for your HF gateway, like that's about the I think that's like one of the main situations where you would want something other than localhost. And then you have to put your like name, your contact address, and like a non-Winlink email address to for the Winlink team to contact you in case there's any issues. And then once you push update, like it'll try to log in, and the app will try to log into Winlink. And like if you have authorization, then like it will turn green, as I showed in earlier. If there's any issues connecting, then it'll be a different color. And then this VAR FM TNC settings is like one of the channel options in RMS packet. So, which basically consists of an enabled checkbox. Like in the case of VARA, like what IP address your the VARA FM program is running. So like almost always one localhost or 127.0.0.1. And it's almost always going to be like port 8300 unless that's changed in the VARA FM program for some reason. FM speed mode, you want 9600 if you support wide, like VARA FM wide, 1200 if you support only narrow. And then the location of the VARA FM modem, which should be like the default path if you don't change anything when you're setting up VARA FM. And then you want the call sign of your gateway, what people are going to be connecting to. And usually on FM, there's going to be an SSID at the end. And traditionally, it started at traditionally people have used -10, but like I believe you can use anything between like -1 and like -15 or something along those lines. And then you'll want to put the frequency of the gateway, as in what radio what the radio is set to. Oh yeah, that's something I probably should have mentioned as well. You also want to take into account your area's like band plan. So 431 megahertz is one of the areas for packet in Southern California. And that's why that was chosen. So like you definitely don't want to be stepping on like existing voice operations like simplex, or even worse, stepping on some repeater, because that will not make you friends quickly. And then you want to put how many like watts your radio is set to for output and how high the antenna is, and like the gain of the antenna, if you know that. And then finally, you can do an optional login message. You may have seen that on other gateways that you've connected to before. It's a single line. You can basically put whatever you want. For K6AQ-10, I just put the location and who people can contact if there's questions. And then some tips for setting up VARA FM. You want to aim for approximately -13 dB on the dial for receive when the squelch is open and there's no signal. And from the experiences of ARES LAX and the experiences here, that tends to produce like the best signal to noise ratio. So you get the fastest possible speeds when communicating with other gateways as well as like client stations. And then and usually that's at least on the DRA series, that's a pot on the board that you can adjust. In my experience, that only got me close. Like it's very, very touchy, and it's hard to keep it at like single dB. Like it basically adjusts at like about like more than that every tiny turn that I make. So I got it pretty close, and then I just used the Windows sound settings to get it to 13. And then on the transmit side, like an easy way to adjust the transmit volume and make sure it's okay is that get your HT, set it to the same frequency as the gateway. And then maybe have the gateway like plugged into a dummy load or something so that you don't accidentally desense yourself. And then you want to adjust the transmit volume on the interface or in Windows until it stops getting louder in the HT. And that means you're at full modulation. And then if you back it off a little bit, that gets you close. And then to get like something, in my experience anyway, and then to get like fully spot on, you can use the VARA FM's auto tune functionality with another gateway or like another station in general, and that will adjust the transmit volume inside VARA FM to like get it basically spot on. So as we discussed earlier, there's different types of operating modes during outages. So there's internet only, which basically rejects all attempted connections to your gateway. That might be an option if like, say you have no ability to forward on, say, for instance, you don't have HF, you don't have like any sort of backup internet connectivity, or you have backup internet, like a satellite connection or something. Internet only might very well be like a viable option. You can do radio only, which causes your gateway to only accept like radio only connections. For instance, if you inside the Winlink Express dropdown thing where you can create a radio only session or send radio only emails. I'm not sure I've ever seen that used in practice. That could be something to, radio only in particular. That could be something that might be useful to play with later. You can also be a local message hub. So the downside of that is it causes your gateway to not go out to the wider internet. So like your gateway will basically be disconnected from the Winlink network in general. So that's not a mode that I would recommend, but like it's there if you want to use it. And then there's store and forward. So like it basically stores outgoing emails to like on the gateway. And then when internet connectivity comes back, or if you have like HF forwarding functionality on your gateway, then it will forward either via HF or it will wait until the internet comes back. And all of this is set up in the operating mode and HF forwarding option under the settings menu in RMS Relay, which is what this dialog box looks like. So as you can see, the various operating modes are at the top. And then if you choose to support HF forwarding, there are several ways you can do it. There's just a normal forward messages via HF, and that option requires a Pactor modem, and Pactor modems have a significant cost. If if you already have one of those, that might be a viable option, or if you can get one for cheap. And then the next one is it operates as a mode in the Winlink hybrid network. That requires tri-mode to run, and I haven't really played with that much because I'm not capable of having an HF gateway here. But if I can figure out a way to get to be able to use tri-mode without actually having an HF gateway, then that might be a possibility. And then there's options for automatic sending control. You would probably want to keep that disabled because I believe it's not legal for US stations to use that. I might be 100% wrong on that. And then but that's something to do further research if you're interested in doing HF forwarding. If you're going to be using tri-mode, there's also options to automatically start and stop it. I'm guessing there is a way to support HF forwarding because if there's the auto start and stop functionality. But like I said, I'll have to do more research on that. And then if you're going to be using tri-mode, there's you can tell it to allow forwarding via VARA or allow forwarding via Pactor. And then as well as if you're using Pactor, the maximum Pactor level. So for US stations, you'll want the maximum to be 3 and not 4 as screenshotted here. So once you have everything set up and you have inside the hardware and the software configuration, you'll want to test it. So easiest way is to have others try to use the gateway to verify that they can connect. And you can easily coordinate that via the ARES reflector or other reflectors and or the local repeaters. You can also use your own gateway yourself on occasion, and I'm guilty of doing that for K6AQ 10. Mainly to ensure that this gateway is actually still functioning. And then if you do find issues, you'll of course want to double check all of your connections in your software setup to make sure that nothing changed in the meantime. And then once you have everything all working, you'll want to harden the setup to make it more reliable. So you'll want to I recommend disabling automatic Windows updates to make sure that the gateway doesn't reboot on its own. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't install Windows updates at all. You should still install them with as soon as you possibly can to because a lot of the updates resolve security issues. And the last thing you want is for your gateway to be hacked into because it's way behind on Windows patches. Or patches for say the RMS applications. And then you also want to add shortcuts to the whatever RMS applications you're using to your startup folder. And I put in the slide where that folder typically is, but that's pretty much a handful, a mouthful to say. The easiest way to get to that is to hold down the Windows key and the R key at the same time, and then type in shell:startup in the box that appears. And that will basically send you to the same location. And then you'll also want to make sure your emergency power solution works. So occasionally cut the AC power to your gateway and make sure that it if you have auto switching, make sure it automatically switches over to your emergency power. And then if it doesn't, or if it doesn't last as long as you'd expect, say your batteries have gone bad, that would be something you would want to find out before the disaster happens. And then you'll also want to occasionally, if you have forwarding set up, you also want to occasionally trigger network outages to make sure that works. And then a RMS relay can actually do that, so you don't have to unplug the Ethernet cable to your router or to your gateway. And then scheduling drills is always good as well, because that would let you exercise like something like your gateway in a situation that's closer to what it would be in an actual emergency. So like stuff that might not come up in a typical, like just testing all the other ones on, like all the other possible issues on their own. And anyways, that's basically all I have for presentation. So I'll go ahead and I guess we'll go ahead and open it up for questions if anyone has any.
All right, if anybody has any questions, you can raise your hand by going to the reaction button.
Hey, Dave, your audio is not good.
All right, hang on a minute. Let me fix that.
It's RF and the audio.
And then I'll have like additional slides at the end of that last slide that I just showed, which has links to like the stuff that we talked about, and like if you want to, and then I'll email that out to the reflector after this presentation, and that will like so that people will have it for reference.
All right, is my audio any better?
Yep.
All right.
Much better. Thank you, David.
All right, earphones work well. If anybody has any questions, you can go to the reaction button and raise your hand, and we can try and keep it orderly with 30 people. And I don't see any hands going up other than a good presentation. And we do have an announcement from Steve Waterman, who is in here as a guest this morning. Steve, why don't you go ahead with your announcement?
Okay, I just wanted to also recognize Greg, our excellent forms maker, who's in here, who just provided several state agencies with an ICS form that they've been asking for some time. I don't have a lot to do with that part of Winlink, so I'm shy about asking, but I finally got pressured into doing so. It didn't take him any time at all. I thought it would be, you know, a real complicated task, but apparently it was duck soup. So thank you, Greg. What I just found out from Phil Sherrod, who's the programmer for the programs you've been discussing today and the client program, Winlink Express, that there's a terrific new feature in there, being that a picture is always worth 1,000 words, or a word's worth a millipicture. Can I share the screen?
Yes, let me make you a co-host, and then you can share screen. Go ahead, Steve.
Let's see, and that's well, here, okay. As you know, in Winlink Express, you can run two modes as a hybrid system. One, you can run a radio only mode. We're not going to discuss that. That's a dangerous thing to run on the amateur radio bands when you consider you have a total of 5 kilohertz on 40 meters to run a 2.4 kilohertz backdoor signal or any other wide protocol signal. It's not good to look at radio only unless you're in a dire emergency situation. So we're talking about standard Winlink, which uses HF or VHF to bridge the internet to the internet over RF. That's what we're talking about here today. I don't have VARA set up, and I don't have right now amateur radio set up. This is a CISA share system, the DHS Winlink system, but I've changed the frequency so nobody can get upset. And I wanted to show this because it's the same whether regardless of what service you're using in Winlink, whether it's amateur radio public or whether it's shares or any other aspect of Winlink. It's all the same. The only things are is the dots change on the map. This is a Pactor, since it's less crowded. This is Pactor on the Shares DHS network. And I am located in Nashville, Tennessee, which if you look at the green dots, I'm the little funny looking green dot there. And that green dot are from where I'm located, based on my coordinates where I'm located, for the frequency range during that period of time that this was made, which is about 10 minutes ago, it shows just like the channel selection behind the screen that I'm looking at here. When you open a session for VARA, Pactor, RDOP, whatever you're opening a session for, whatever service you're using, you're going to get this particular thing here. One of them, this says Pactor Winlink, but it could say VARA and it could say RDOP, as long as we're dealing with propagation. And if you look, you'll see where it says channel selection. Normally you would have a list of green, which are high probability for connection, yellow, which is a so-so probability based on the government's prediction program. And the red would be stay away because you can't connect, which is, remember, that's not truth, it's a guideline. So if you look at the light green, that's me, and these are the stations which the propagation program says that I can connect. If I click on this station, it will bring up, this is the Ohio EMA, it will bring up the stage, the RMS, there's an RMS there, and it will bring up the frequency you want to use and the bearing and the quality, etc. And you just click on that and then hit select right here on the right-hand side of that menu, and you're ready to go on that frequency for that RMS. And that is a brand new feature that Phil Shared just put in there. I think it's terrific, especially if you're in a situation where you're not the only RMS in the neighbor user in the neighborhood, perhaps in more of an emergency situation where a lot of RMSs are being used. This is an excellent visual, quick look at what's available. So I wanted to bring that to everybody's attention. It's in the, if you don't have it in your version, if you go to Winlink Express Setup, look at the check boxes, the check boxes at the right-hand bottom of Setup, the bottom check box. If you check that and then bring your program back up again after you take it down, it will upgrade to version, whatever this is, .4, and that will provide you with this capability. I have not tried this in VARA or RDOP because I haven't got those modes set up currently. I did try it on Pactor, on K4CJX and the ham bands, and it all works. It all works regardless of protocol. So that's all I had to say about that, Dave. Thank you very. The other thing is one comment that one last thing that the gentleman that gave the presentation made that I want to emphasize. It's not not intuitive for a ham. A ham wants to maximize, not optimize. They want to maximize the signal that they put out. Think about being in a flood or a fire or some situation where, or an apartment complex or an attic antenna or a vertical that has a lot of multipass distortion because you're mixing ground wave with sky wave. But think about a not so great end user station, and he's contacting an RMS that's got a 5 or 6 element Yagi pointed directly at him, and the station is knocking him out of the rowboat he's in the flood, or out of the Jeep he's in the fire, and or in his home with his attic antenna in his HOA environment, And he's wondering, why can't I connect to this station? The reason why he can't connect to this station is because he's putting out 30 watts or 50 watts with a 30-foot piece of wire stuck up over a tree limb. So it's not always good to have a loud alligator type station when you're running a radio message server. Sometimes it's better to back off and have a quieter, maybe closed loop antenna, or an antenna that's absolutely resonant on a specific frequency, so that you don't have those issues. And he did bring that up, but I wanted to emphasize it because it's a problem, because hams like to put out as much as they can.
That's true. That's true. And we
Thank you
got a
so much.
question from Jim Price. Go ahead, Jim.
I just had a couple of comments. Can you, everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, Mooneer, great. I hope I'm pronouncing that great properly. Great presentation. I'm sort of pushing Winlink for the state, so I'm glad to see what you're doing. Two things. I've on the gateway that I've just done, I put in a program called R2 startup delay. And I put that on one of the little $108 Amazon computers. I can't believe it. Right now they're out of them, but maybe they'll have them again pretty soon. So that startup delay, or you can either delay by the amount of activity in the processor or by time. And I delayed by 30 seconds so that I don't start RMS relay when the processor is busy after a restart. And the other thing, just real quickly about antennas, on the gateway that I'm running here, a shares gateway, I've got a 135-foot antenna that runs along the fence line on the hedge, just above the hedge, because I have HOA here. And I get about 100 connections a month on that using Pactor. So there's a lot of possibilities for HF. Just have to be a little creative. So great presentation. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Jim. I got another comment from Dan. Go ahead, Dan.
Well, first of all, thanks to San Diego ARRL for knocking down geographic boundaries. Kudos.
There aren't any.
It was a great presentation. You brought something up that I had just never thought about before, and that is the for a gateway, the donut hole is dependent on the antenna you're using, and you pointed out that you might be overshooting your target audience or undershooting it. So I'm just starting to think, within this world of phased arrays, is there going to be some way soon we'll be able to tune our antennas remotely so as to dynamically change, where the signal's going. I know with the microwave stuff, it's built into the hardware, and I'm not aware of any propagation programs that take that into account. They just want to know elevation and gain. So you opened up a whole new field of investigation with that comment of yours, and now I'm probably going to take a year and a half to figure it out.
Well, that's good. At least we're opening people's eyes and making them think. But there aren't any boundaries here for San Diego. We try and include everybody and thank everybody for being here. Greg, Steve, Jim, glad you could stop by, and you're more than welcome anytime we want to have a presentation.
So
Any additional questions?
Rob has a comment in the chat that I haven't addressed yet. So he was asking like how I chose the frequency for K6AQ-10. And basically, as I alluded to in the presentation, I was going off the band plan for Southern California. So like in Southern California, it's Scriba that handles the band plans for 70 centimeters. So if I open up the band plan for it, there's a segment in the 431 megahertz range that's set aside for digital, and then there's different segments within the digital range that have separate data limits. And these were like written back in the days when packet was more common. But I basically, what I did was I ended up going as far, I went as far to like as far down as I possibly could. So like 431.020. And a lot of that was because, like I said, I am like in a restricted HOA type situation, and I can really only have one VHF and one HF antenna. So like and I didn't want to like no longer have a station that I can use voice on. So in order to give the duplexer system that I had to buy the best chance of working properly, I provided as much separation as I possibly could between the gateway and the 440, 450 megahertz like frequency range that the repeaters around here are typically on. So hopefully, Rob, that answers your question.
Mooneer, yes, thank you very much.
All right, do we have any additional comments or questions for either Mooneer or Steve?
I have a question for Mooneer, or probably for Mooneer. You put the frequency in. If you have a USB connected radio, does it automatically find out what the frequency is, or can you use Winlink to set the frequency in the radio, or are they disconnected?
On the ARES Gateway software, it's manual configuration of the radio, and then for Winlink Express, as far as I know, it's manual configuration of manually setting the frequency if for VHF and UHF. For HF, you can set it up to Winlink Express up to automatically have the radio go to the gateway's frequency.
Right, I've done that for Winlink Express, but I wasn't sure if it was just, fat finger that in, and it was a convenience for, people connecting to find out what you thought your frequency was, that kind of a thing.
I guess it's I guess it's a convenience thing for at least on the Winlink Express side. Presumably for the gateway side, for setting up a gateway, it's you probably don't want to change the frequency of the gateway all that often, or it probably won't ever change, or change so infrequently that it probably wouldn't be a huge deal just to manually set it up again and like manually change it in the application and on the radio itself. Oh yeah, that's another thing that I probably should have mentioned as well. Like to like make sure that like the station's hardened. Like I personally locked the controls on the Olinko radio that I'm using for the gateway, so that I don't accidentally bump the dial and change the dial frequency. So that's another possible way, a possible failure mode that you would want to guard against. So hopefully I was able to answer that question.
All right. Any other questions this morning?
Yeah, I have a question.
Go ahead, Dennis.
Yeah, I was just interested to know if Mooneer had taken any hardening steps with respect to backup power for his internet modem and router.
I actually have I have Spectrum here at home, and I have the cable modem and the Ubiquity router that I'm using for the internet here at home on a UPS. So that's on a normal home like AC UPS. So that part's taken care of. But for I believe since I haven't tried to run to see how long that part of it lasts, since it is on an AC UPS, but there is also no real PC plugged into that UPS. So it's I imagine it would last like significantly longer than it would have had there been a PC plugged into it. Something that might be like useful for improvement in the future, though, is to maybe find a way to plug the router and the modem into the same like DC power, like Epic power gate that the gateway is on.
Thank you.
All right. Any additional questions here this morning? Sid, from Dan, it looked like you're.
Would it be easier if I just asked him? You're muted, Dave.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so Mooneer, and I may be mistaken, but when you showed your screen and I was looking at your putty output, it looked like you weren't using the LiFePO 4 battery that you had in line. And it's been my experience recently that for optimum uptime, if you want to hit the 5 nines, if you have LiFePO 4 batteries in line, power the equipment directly from them, their cycle, their duty cycles are rated from 100% state of charge down to almost nothing, and depending on the manufacturer. And it seems like they all have, and so partial discharge only counts for that percent of a single cycle. So with 5,000 to 10,000 duty cycles guaranteed for LiFePO batteries, why wouldn't you want to just use it as your DC filter and keep it in line and running full time? And that could be just out of, it could be a useless question if I misread your putty screen.
So the thing with lithium batteries in general is that they, like, it's recommended to charge them like constant current, at least if you're starting from zero, to charge them constant current followed by like a constant voltage near the end. And just using it as a DC filter, like, while I guess it might be possible, like my concern would mainly be in an extended outage where like we do go down to zero, and then I wouldn't necessarily want to like immediately put 13.8 volts back into the battery like at a constant voltage when charging from zero again. So the nice thing about the Epic Power Gate and like similar products is that they have the circuitry and inside that can handle all that for you. So like my choice of just running it through the Power Gate is mainly to avoid accidentally abusing the battery.
As expensive as they are, I understand that. Well, okay. Tesla and the military, Tesla publishes don't ever let them go below 20% and don't charge them above 80%. But the military stuff I'm familiar with, it's intended for, indefinite length extended outages. And they basically also have solar, but with a LiFePO 4 specific charger algorithm. So maybe oranges and, potatoes. But it struck me because that was the first instance that I realized that somebody was using a LiFePO battery just as a failover instead of, the DC filter and continuous source. And I guess it's the engineering behind it, and you're way ahead of me in that, so I'm paying attention. Thanks.
All right, we have a question from Cliff, K6AQ. Go ahead, Cliff.
Cliff, you're muted.
Thank you. On the lithium ion phosphate batteries, we're going down a pretty steep curve as far as cost. There's one on Amazon now that's pretty good ratings, but time will tell, for about $550 for 100 amp hour capacity. But I just wanted to throw out there that they all come with BMSs, battery management systems, and they're just about all spec'd for a 1C charge capacity. So 100 amp hour 12 volt battery can be charged safely at 100 amps. So off of a generator, a Honda EU2000 or whatever, you could pretty much top that thing off in an hour, which is quite a fail safe for you in case solar or whatever, in a grid down situation with bad weather. The other thing is they're rated for 3,100% to 0%, which is lead acids. They're dead at, you're never going to do that, but they're all rated at that, and they come with sometimes exaggerated warranties, but you could probably figure you'll get a 2 to 3 year warranty out of it. But I just wanted to throw that out there.
Cool. I didn't know they had dropped that much down. When I bought my the 50 amp hour ish battery that I have in the Gateway now, it was something like 300 whatever. So it looks like the pricing's definitely gotten much better since I last looked into it.
Yeah, I believe it's an amper time. Now they're new, and of course the track record has to be proven, but they claim automotive grade batteries, and so, but you know, like you say, you have to proceed cautiously. But $560, it's pretty attractive with some good ratings.
Hmm.
All right, all good information this morning, all good information. We had a couple more things in.
Dave, we lost you again.
All right, let me. Is anyone using RDOP for gateways?
There are definitely people using RDOF for gateways on, I haven't looked recently to see anywhere nearby, but if you go on the Winlink website, there's an RMS like list / map thing on there as well. And that will like let you filter based on like the mode. And then as Steve mentioned earlier, there's also the map inside the Winlink Express application now, which will show exactly the same thing.
All right, and from Jonathan, I'd like to hear more about the duplexer, what model and how does it work in practice, sharing the antenna between the gateway and non-gateway use.
Yeah, so let me, here, I'll go ahead and share my screen again and I actually do mention the duplexer in one of the appendix slides that I have. So I basically, the gateway, I have to have a duplexer as well as this bandpass filter. The reason for that is, actually, I'll open the other link too. So the reason for that is that the duplexer that they sell on eBay, they basically work as like a combination low and high pass filter. So the low port would basically be the low pass filter, and then the high port would be the high pass filter. So like because of that, like when I just had the duplexer in like on its own, like my main station radio like wasn't interfered with by the gateway, but the gate I believe the gateway was interfered when I transmitted on my main station radio. So it was blocking some of it, but not all of it coming back. So I had to add the bandpass filter in line as well to basically knock out any remaining like descents. But the good news is that the duplexer on its own prevented like the worst case scenario, which was like frying either radio. Like there was just like residual descents that I had to do the filter, that I add the filter for to resolve. And it's been working pretty well so far. They're restricted to about 50 watts, but you probably wouldn't want to run more than that for gateway use anyway. Or like in my case, I wouldn't want to run like 1500 watts, for instance, through like my antennas and like interfere with my neighbors, because that would be problematic for future operation here. Anyways, hopefully that and then again, I'll have like those slides will be in the presentation that I email out as well after this is over, so that like if you want to like visit the like links and read more about that.
All right, and on the RDOP, if you go to the winlink.org website and click on tools and the RMS map, and you can click on RDOP and see what's there. There is one in Tijuana that's close to us, and there are two up towards LA, both on 40 meters. All right, any additional questions? All right, if we don't have anything else, we're going to go ahead and
Oh, Cliff has a question.
Cliff has a question. I just saw that.
Thank you. I'll be brief. As I've heard I'm new to the Winlink, and I would, in an optimal situation, like to run it on a Chromebook. The new versions of Chrome also run Linux. Is there anybody that's tried an implementation of Winlink on Linux?
I've never used it, but there's a program called Pat, which does run on Linux.
Okay.
For if you want to do like just normal client station. The downside is that it doesn't support VARA. I believe it supports Packet, and I think it supports RDOP as well, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
Perfect. Thank you.
I've used Pat on Mac OS and for a short while, and I ended up buying Parallels and installing a Win 10 OEM license.
All right, we got Jim has another question. Go ahead, Jim.
Well, I just had a comment. I've tried running Woodlink on Linux using a program called Crossover, which actually uses Wine, and I can't get it to work. I've tried several times. It's very, very techy, very tricky. It's just easier to spend $118 than buy a little teeny Windows computer, in my opinion.
I've tried to run it on, I've tried to set up Wine on my MacBook, which is what I use for most of my normal computing stuff. And since Apple doesn't allow, like I think like WinLink Express, there was something that WinLink Express required, or WinLink Express itself, that was like 32-bit only or something, and Apple doesn't support 32-bit applications anymore. So like I was never able to get it running. I imagine you might have better luck on like a non-Apple machine, or like running on Linux or something.
Well, there's a fellow that's I can't remember his call sign. It's in the VARA group. I've seen it on how to do it using Wine and how to do it using Crossover, which is a $35 program. And it is just a nosebleed to try to get it to work. I can't get it. You have to put in .NET, you have to put in Service Pack, you have to put in a whole bunch of things. It's just my recommendation is buy the little teeny computer from Amazon and use that.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk anybody out of buying little teeny computers, because that supports an industry we need. But going back 15 years, I've been working with virtual machines, and my best Windows and WinLink machines now are all Macs running Parallels. So it's not appropriate for a gateway, but if you want, a briefcase with a couple of computers you can count on, that's the route I'm choosing.
All right, got a comment from Steve. He says run VMware Fusion with the iOS on a Mac, and Windows 10 runs like a clock. So there's another way.
I can definitely recommend Fusion. That's what I run on my MacBook.
Yeah. All right, we got another comment from Jim. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, I just wondering, looking down the road, do you think there'll be a demise in Packet Winlink when VARA FM gets going? Like when Winmore disappeared?
Already is.
Okay.
All right, any additional questions?
Was Steve hinting that Jose is making a multi-user version of VARA?
No, what I'm saying is that the wide version of VARA FM is about 3 times the speed of 9600 baud packet with the perfect deviation and the perfect everything. It's just a different type of protocol, and it is more suited toward the environment that we're in today. Its only downfall, there were 2 downfalls. One, you couldn't digi to it. Now you can. The other downfall is that it doesn't run multiple people at the same time, but you know, that just depends on what the purpose of your, if you're having fun and you're dealing with a hobby, they're both great. If you're depending on life and property, I wouldn't, I would stick with VARA. The only reason why it isn't out of the handbands on Winlink is because it's a one-man operation and can't do that. But as far as the protocol and the way it works, it's dynamite in a small package. Almost something for nothing.
Right, right. All right, any other comments this morning?
I've gotten, going back to the Winlink wide or VARA FM wide, and my experience, I've gotten up to like 80K a minute on
That's
Winlink
right.
using VARA FM wide. So it's definitely significantly faster than like Packet was, and significantly faster than even like VARA HF.
Oh, you definitely.
Yes, very, very much so.
Is that K bits or K bytes?
I want to say bytes, actually.
80,000 bytes.
Yeah.
per
All
minute.
right, any additional questions this morning?
I just, I've seen 17, 18, 18,000 bits per second, or no, let's see.
That's right.
All I would say with VARA FM, it flies. It
Yeah.
flies.
It
There's
does.
no comparison with Packet. None.
And not to get technical, but Packet BPS is similar to Packet baud. VARA BPS is not similar to VARA baud rate. So because of the nature of the protocol, but no matter how you slice it, it's much more robust and much faster than Packet. AX.25 Packet is old. I mean, it's been around a long time. It's a godsend to a lot of us, and it's not expensive. They got a guy there in California, Phil Carnes, who helped develop that protocol, who also agrees with what I just said. So a guy like that agreeing, what can you say?
That's it, that's for sure. That's for sure. Jim has another comment. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, just quick question. So I've used my Signal Link box to do VARA FM, and it works great. What was the cheaper version of an interface to use instead of the Signal Link for FM VARA?
So it's called, it's from Masters Communications.
Okay.
Share my screen again. So if you, masterscommunications.com, there's the RA series and the DRA series. Both of them work okay. The DRA was like built, like optimized more for like, I guess, like for like digital modes. So the 36 is what's currently used in my gateway. And then I upgraded to the DRA 45, which was the funny thing was that I originally had intended the 45 to be used in the gateway since it had the DB9 connector and the Linkos use DB9. But I ended up swapping it around because I also use it on my Kenwood D700 for as a when I'm a Winlink client. And Kenwoods are notorious for needing very high drive levels in order for the modulation to be okay. So I ended up just using the 45 as for my portable setup and the 36 for the gateway, and that seems to work pretty well. But like if you the various models, like if you go to like the feature comparison, it actually like tells you like what the differences are between them. You'd probably want the more than likely you'd probably would want like one of these four, like 30, 36, 45, or 50. The 65 or 70, I've never used them, but they contain the Vox PTT capability. I guess if you have a radio that doesn't like, or I guess like if you have like something that like isn't capable of using the like the built-in PTT functionality inside the C media chip that comes on it, that's probably like the reason why you would get it. But like, say you go, but like the 36, for instance, like without a case, it's only $36. And then like if you add $30, it'll come like assembled and tested. And then you can also buy it with a case, and that adds a little bit of money on it as well. When I bought my Signal Link, it was like something close to $100, if not a little bit more than that. So it was it's definitely like a significant savings, especially if you can if you're able to like solder and like build it yourself versus buying pre-assembled.
All right.
Mooneer, you said you'll be sending out information later, links and everything on the email reflector to ARES.
Like I'm going to be sending a PDF of the presentation, and in the like there'll be extra slides at the end of the presentation with like links and everything.
Perfect. So when people want to learn more, it'll all be in there. Thank you, Mooneer.
Yeah, so then we'll post the video of this a little later too. Jim had another question. Go ahead, Jim.
Just a comment, I've put in two of the DRA 50s on gateways. They work fine. They have some little pot adjustments there that make it a little easier. I understand Signal Link, the newer ones will work with the wide mode. It's a transformer issue on those, but I haven't used one.
I haven't either. I haven't tried the wide with my Signal Link either, so I'm not sure myself. I've had it for quite a while, so I doubt it'll work on wide. Any other comments this morning? All right, with nothing else here, we'll go ahead and close this and try to get everything going. It's been a great meeting this morning. Thanks, Mooneer, and thanks, Steve and Jim, for all your other comments. And it's been good. Been one of our better meetings, I think. Again, thanks everybody for being there, and we will be in touch.
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Thank
Mooneer.
you. Thank you for letting me
Kiss
speak.
San
And thank
Diego
you guys for
ground
coming.
for me. Kiss the San Diego ground for me, okay?
All right.
All right, we will.
You get out the Coronado, bow, give it a couple of bows.
We
I was
will.
going to say, kiss it every day. It's standing still.
And they're talking about maybe they're going to have the air show again this year, so we'll see how that goes.
Thanks, Mooneer. Bye all.
Did Steve check out? Oh, Steve, start thinking about Starlink and how you're going to integrate that into shares.